Staffy, I know you're a bit of a secret Spurs fan, as people say, but do you feel that the way people are turning on Ange Postecoglou is a little bit over the top right now?
I'm here to defend Ange. I'm not gonna defend the Spurs team because I don't know how Ange has been exposed yesterday. I feel like yesterday's game showed me that the players got exposed. I watched the game yesterday. I saw the possession. I saw the shooting stats. I saw everything, and it showed me that Spurs have a good manager with not just good with not good players. I feel like if we want to be objective and talk about the team, you can 100% slander the individuals on the pitch, and no one is safe from the criticism. Even Basuma, he's the biggest L I held this season because he started the season very good, and he just fell off a cliff since. So
But
he's actually
better than Declan Rice, you said, didn't you?
um said he's a better six. We're not gonna revisit
You
that.
said he's better than Declan Rice.
In
Don't
the
do a
six,
Don here. Don't be a Don and try to fix it.
he has not been better than Rice this season. Let's drop this. I've said it multiple times. Rice has been better than him. If anything, I actually have a new narrative to push. I think they need to sell Basuma. I think he's one of those players that has the footballing ability, but it's never gonna match it with his attitude and his work ethic on the pitch. And I look at Ange and I look what he requires from his players, and I don't think Basuma is gonna be it. Even Madison, listen, Madison, there was a lot of comparisons in the beginning of the season between him and Bruno and Odegaard and De Bruyne. And it's easy to say, very easy to say that he's been the worst this season because he started also the season very well. And he's also fell off a cliff since his injury. And them two are meant to be, I would say, two of the best 3-4 players in that team. You know, when you look at Romero, Van de Ven, and what's his name, and Son. I mean, these are the players you're supposed to rely on, and I don't think Ange has been able to rely on these guys. I watched the game yesterday. I love how no one calls out the fact that they conceded 2 goals to set pieces. Everyone talks about the high line, but they didn't concede any goals because of the high line. So it's like I understand people like to push the agendas, but let's at least wait for a game like the Newcastle game where the high line got exposed. So I would ask everyone to be just a little bit more objective than that. But anyways, and to me, listen, if you get to go to Stamford Bridge and have about 64% possession, have 19 shots, but only like 3 or 4 on target, and the fact that you have that amount of possession in the opposition's half and you're not creating clear-cut chances, that's an issue because I don't even know how many clear-cut chances they created. I would love to check that stat, big chances created, but it's probably not that much. And that's the issue. A coach's job is always to get you to the final third, and the final third is when if you're a quality player, you tend to express yourself. And I didn't see that from Spurs, and I don't see a lot against low blocks. That's the issue. I seen Ange yesterday scream at them saying, "Stop passing backwards." He was getting frustrated. And that just shows me one thing. This manager knows clearly what he wants. I still have issues with his lack of adaptability, but I'm not using that towards yesterday's game because I don't think he lost yesterday because of his system or anything. He just lost because they just have a shit piece coach. But that's a different topic. I look at the Spurs team yesterday, and if I'm a Spurs fan, I am demanding big transfers this summer because this is for once that in recent years they have a manager that has a very clear identity of what he wants to do, and actually it's not pragmatic, it's not negative, it's not anti-football like they used to say about Conte and Mourinho and all of them. He's a manager that really wants to do something, but you can't what does this say, Terry? You can't polish a turd. You can't really do that with some of these players. You really can't. Like you look at the quality on the pitch, there's nothing you could do with an Emerson Royale and these
I'm
guys.
giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I think he needs to be given time to improve this squad. I think Spurs fans turning on him completely is crazy. Where I slightly disagree with you, though, because I saw you put it in the group chat last night, like you said on the show, like, why is Terry blaming Postecoglou when they conceded set pieces? As far as I'm concerned, as the manager of a football club, you're accountable if your team is weak at set pieces, the same as you're accountable if you're good at set pieces.
That's a fair criticism.
Yeah. And I think when he comes out in a press conference, basically saying he doesn't care about set pieces, and then they concede 2 more from them, that's a problem. 100%. And this is what I mean by being exposed. All managers are at risk of being exposed. Last season, City was struggling, and then they adapted their system. They weren't exposed to a level where they weren't going to be in a title race, but teams are working out a way of nullifying them a little bit and getting something, and they adapt. And whether it be the setup on set pieces, whether it is the high line at particular points in the game, I think one of the areas that he's got to adapt is they tend to start a lot of games, especially early on in the season, like a freight train. And remember what I said earlier on this campaign about Arsenal? And I know I got a bit of stick for this when they lost to Villa, but I felt they started the season off slower, almost on purpose. And it may not have come as obvious as the manager saying to the players, play with less intensity, because I don't think it would work if you did that. But it's almost like him subtly doing it, where this is how we're going to play at the moment. And it is a less intense game so that you can pace yourself, because I think Spurs look, considering the amount of games they haven't played, they've not been in Europe, they didn't go on cup runs, they look shagged out, which is a very English expression for tired. They look shagged out. And I think it's because they started the season every game.
That word meant something else, but fair enough.
No, when someone, yeah, no, it does mean something else, right? It's shagged also means a little bit of the horizontal hula, but I don't know if it's said all over England, but in London, when you say, oh, I'm shagged out, it means you're tired as well. It's got that double meaning.
Now, can I just say one thing about the set pieces thing? I just want to say two things about the set pieces thing. First of all, I mean, the only reason Chelsea scored from set pieces is just because Chelsea missed their clear-cut chances. Nicholas Jackson, Cole Palmer, I wrote it down. I literally wrote down the clear-cut chance. The funny part is I wrote down the clear-cut chances in case Chelsea fans wanted to waffle about Pochettino. I wrote the Jackson miss, the Palmer tap-in, the Mudryk chance in the 4th minute, the Mudryk chance in the 20th minute, the Madueke chance in the 23rd minute, Palmer 52nd, the Mudryk one in the 46th minute where Vicario gave it to him and he gave it back to him. So I stopped writing after that because Chelsea scored twice in it. So I knew no one was going to say Poch out. But the point is, Chelsea missed their clear-cut chances. Chelsea actually created more clear-cut chances than Spurs did. I actually think Chelsea could have won by 3 or 4 goals. Spurs had what we call empty possession. You could pass left, pass right 500 times. That's calm by me. You can pass all you want. And at the end of the day, I'm going to get the 3 points. I'm going to get the victory. And by the way, speaking of Poch, people are blaming Poch all year long for set-piece defending. Now that Spurs are the worst club at it in the league, I'm gonna blame Ange for it as well. I'm just keeping the logic consistent. At the end of the day, the same people that were propping up the manager and these players at the start of the season now need to take a step back and choose which hill they want to die on, because both hills are going down, whether it be the Ange one or the players one, for different reasons. Because Ange is never ever going to get the good players enough to play his way of football at Spurs anyway. It's not like Spurs is going to go out there and sign Rodri level players, so he's never going to be able to implement quote unquote Ange ball anyway. Like he's only going to have to be implemented to an extent, so he's never going to. So he's going to have to adapt whether he likes it or not. And some of these players are just not the level of what Spurs fans think they are. Madison is not as good as Odegaard.
Question, Staffy, on that. You said not. You said to Sam like that's not true, and I get that.
It is not true.
But when it comes to De Zerbi, he's getting stick for sticking to one style of football and getting beat too much with a depleted squad of injuries, with a much worse squad than Spurs, and having losing his best players most summer. Why is it different for a Big Ange than it is to a De Zerbi? Genuine question.
No. So when I say it's not true, half that statement is correct, half of it is wrong. There's no way for you to say this manager won't be able to get players to play his style of play. I disagree with that, because there's so many managers out there that play their style of play with lesser quality players than the traditional top 6 or the traditional big 6 teams. However, I've said this before, I don't think he'll get enough players to compete and win the league. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't get enough players to be a consistent top 4 contender, which I think Ange will be. But you know that, Terry, because we spoke about this off air before, and that's the same thing I said about De Zerbi. And you remember these exact words. I said, playing this style of football, there's a low ceiling for it. Because once you reach that ceiling, you can't go over it until you start becoming adaptable as a manager. That's why when you look at traditionally all the elite managers that used to win leagues, they had more than just plan A. They had a couple plans. We've seen that with Conte. Remember when Conte, I think he lost 4 to Arsenal, and then he changed up his formation the game after, and then he went on that mad winning run, and then he ended up winning the league. That's what big managers do. Obviously, Pep does it every year, but I'm not going to compare anyone to Pep because he's probably the greatest of all time. Ange 100% can get enough players to play his style play, because I've seen it this season with lesser quality players. You don't need a lot of investment to get someone better than Emerson, Real, and Davis, because the floor is already very low with these players.
Of course.
Some of the players in the midfield, it's so easy to get someone better than Højbjerg because he's not that good. It's so easy to get someone better than Richarlison and Brennan Johnson. Which, by the way, what a flop of a signing that was. I told people I'd rather have Daniel James in my team, and they laughed at me. Daniel James didn't even cost us 50 million. So yes, once again, I'd rather have Daniel James for 15 million than Brennan Johnson for 50. So it is easier for Ange to just go out in the summer and literally spend somewhere between 100 and 150 and already get better players than that. Because I saw him do that with Van de Ven, with Vicario. Who else did he buy in this team? He's already done that enough. But I don't think he'll win the league. If that was what someone was trying to say, he won't get enough. Because you said Rodri. You don't need to get Rodri to play better football. You need to get Rodri to win the league. That's the difference. So if you're trying to say he's never going to get enough players to play Ange and win the league, I agree with you. But just to be a top 4, top 5, he's already top 5 with a shitter team.
So I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I totally agree with you on that. And I think that the problem I had, we had this conversation when we mentioned De Zerbi the other. I love people in the comments saying it was Potter that built that Brighton team. When De Zerbi first arrived, they started scoring more goals. Everybody said, look, De Zerbi's taken to another level. But anyway, I feel like that's the same with any manager who has a one set way of playing. Unless you can get into a club, because I think if you put De Zerbi in Manchester City with all the infrastructure they've got, he could win major trophies because he would be able to buy the best players in the world, and his brand of football looks excellent. He'd have a great chance of winning those major trophies. The problem is when you start going further and further down the pecking order, it's harder to create a team that can produce that style of football, which is why I enjoyed the semi-final so much so far of the Champions League. I feel like all 4 teams are left in it. There is a set way of playing, but it isn't so regimented. It's a little bit more open. It's a bit like, oh, this is going to be intriguing to see how it goes. But I don't know. I look at it that way. That's why I think they've got to give Pochettino, Terry, Postecoglou. They've got to give him at least.
Though, they do have to give Poch time too. By the way, let's get that.
Yeah, I look at the situation differently. Even though that some people are saying you're being a hypocrite. The reason why I still think they've got to look beyond Poch is one, they've started looking anyway, which is it's fairly public knowledge, and
it proves that Chelsea are clueless.
No, I understand all of that, and it's my sort of view on Poch is very similar to my view on Ten Hag. It's they need a reset. In terms of they've got to get rid of a lot of the policies that have been in place. They've got to get rid of some of these players. And I think it's easier to just clear out everything possible and kind of start again.
I disagree completely, Terry.
As opposed to, yeah, I mean, unless the players are completely and utterly bought into the manager, then fair enough. But with Postecoglou, I don't think there's problems in the dressing room. The players want to play for him. Everybody seems to like him. I just think some elements of his system have been found out. And I think some of the players are not good enough. And I think some of the players are burnt out to hell because of the velocity they play at all season. And there's got to be an adaptation of it next year. And seeing Spurs fans say, like, it was only like 5-6 months ago they were singing "We Got Our Tottenham Back." Now there's some people saying get him out the club. I mean, that's just, Spurs coming
Terry,
fifth.
That's the issue, Terry.
I'm not even being horrible. Spurs coming fifth is massive for them. They're the bottom of the top 6 clubs. Over the last 20 years, they're the bottom of the top 6 clubs, and they've got other teams that are historically bigger than them sniffing around them again. Them coming fifth, being in the Europa League, that's a really good season for Tottenham.